Welcome back to Hillock Kennels, tracking dogs for recovering wounded game. In today's video, we're going to cover laying blood trails. Well, laying blood trails with just blood. I typically like training a puppy with scent shoes and blood, and then gradually weaning the blood off so where there's nothing but scent shoes out there. Some of you out there are like, what's a scent shoe? Well, we're going to cover that in the next video. But basically, it holds a foot, the hoof of an animal, and when you step, it puts scent on the ground, scuffs the ground up. But today it's blood only, and the two methods that I like to use are dab method, which is just a sponge on the end of a stick. I've got some blood in a container, and I'll dab in here and I'll put it on the ground. And when I first start, I'll just barely touch the ground because the sponge will be very soaked with blood, and you don't want to put a lot of scent down, a lot of blood. So I'll gradually, just as I go along, further and further, I may put a little bit of pressure down to get a little bit more blood out of the sponge, but I typically can go about 100 yards before I have to refreshen up the sponge. The other method that I use is a drip method, and I just like a large syringe, no needle on it, and I'll pull up some blood, and I can tell exactly how much blood I've got, and I literally will just put just a little bit of pressure on the plunger, and I can put a single drop of blood down, so I can control that. So when you're laying blood trails, at first it's going to be very consistent, every 3 feet, every 6 feet. But as the dog progresses, as you go along and you're making it harder, you may skip a little bit. I may go 9 or 12 feet before I put the next spot of blood. And when I get to turns, at first it's blood, 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 blood. Then it might be blood, 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 blood. Then it might be blood, go up to my turn, make my turn, and blood. Now, that's as you progress. Again, remember, every time I introduce something new, I back up. Cooper's already been doing 3-hour plus tracks, but we made this longer. We also introduced the drip method to laying the track this time. So I'm shortening the length of my track as far as the time frame, but I'm lengthening it as far as the length on the ground. So we'll see how Cooper does. To me, the start is always an important part because it's how you focus the dog and how you get the dog engaged with what you're wanting. Here I'm attempting to get Cooper to sit stay, and I'm backing off to the hit site. I'm looking at it and looking at him. I've got the hit site between me and him, and I'm making eye contact. I'm wanting him to become engaged with what I'm looking at and what I'm asking him to do. Whatever keyword you use, find it, blood, whatever, be consistent with your starts. Again, we have a long ways to go, but I think you'll get it. Let's go. Here. Here it is. Find it. Find it. Good boy. As we get started with the track, you'll notice that I'm very calm, just taking my time unraveling my lead. And what I'm doing is I'm not getting excited about the track. And what that does, that transfers over to the dog. And if you're all excited, you're all amped up, then the dog gets all worked up and they have a tendency to miss things. So by you being patient, you being calm, you help the dog how they work. You transfer that calmness to them. Also, you'll notice that I'm working at the end of the lead. I want that full range of motion for the dog. I want the dog to be able to work that full
30 feet around. I'm also, whenever the dog stops, whenever that lead gets slack, I stop. What happens is if the dog has stopped and you continue to move forward, the dog could just be checking, hey, you still there? Or they could be trying to figure something out, and by you moving forward, you have a tendency to push the dog. The dog may not be comfortable with the track, may not be confident that this is right. And if you continue to move forward, then they're like, well, he's good with it. Let's keep going. And it could be off. So be patient. Uh, Take your time on the track. Work at the end of the lead, and whenever your dog stops, you stop. This will help the dog to gain confidence and that you're only moving forward when the dog is on.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
You've heard me ask the dog, are you sure? What I'm doing is I'm pulling back. I'm putting some pressure on the lead, and I'm pulling back. And what I'm doing is I'm teaching the young dog that when I ask, are you sure? And I put that pressure on them, that you know, they give me a cue. If they continue forward, then we're on. But if I'm asking that and they're not on, come back to me and let's research. And you'll see, that's the first time I've really done that with Cooper. And it's going to take a little bit of training, but I do that with all my dogs. I want them to be able to communicate with me. The tracking lead is your communication. And what that does is that allows you to be able to tell if your dog's on or off. And I always like to keep a tight line, and that way when I put that pressure on them, if they're on, they pull through. If they're off and I ask them, are you sure? They come back to me. Sometimes the dog just gets to an area where maybe other animals are crossed or there's a skip in the scent trail and they just have to work it out. We call that a check, and sometimes it can be really quickly they can figure it out. Sometimes it may take 10, 15, 20 minutes to work it out. When training a young dog, let them work, let them try. Uh, but at the same time, you want them to be successful on all tracks because you want them to know that there's always, if you start, there's always a finish. This just instills in them that you search hard until you find something. Later on, they'll learn that not all tracks end in recovery, but as a pup, you want them to be successful. So after, 10 minutes and they've worked this and they can't figure it out, move up closer to the dog, point out the track. It's very important that you know exactly where the track is at and point it out, get them interested in that spot so that you can, here it is, find it. You're not always talking to the dog, but on occasion you have to refocus them. And so there's nothing wrong with getting closer to the dog and pointing that out. But as soon as they line back out on the track, let the lead slide through your hand, get back to the end of the lead, and let the dog work. From here on down through the woods, you'll notice that Cooper struggles. And what I did is I switched up. I went from the dab method to the drip method and using the syringe to put a single drop of blood. And Cooper was really struggling to find those single drops of blood. There just wasn't a lot there for him to follow. And I just wanted to demonstrate that. Cooper's still relatively young. You know, hasn't even had a dozen tracks under him yet. And this is really tough on him. He works it out. I let him work it out. I don't get up there and show him the track. I want him to find it. I want him to instill in him that drive to find the scent. And everything I'm seeing with the way this dog works, I've been highly impressed. He doesn't give up. He's got that desire to find it, and he keeps working until he does, until he lines out, and then he takes off, and then we go again. You'll notice as we go through the woods here that there's nothing on the ground. This area was burnt back during the spring, and it's more or less bare dirt, and the dog is having to really dig to get the scent out of the ground. Instead of having a lot of vegetation that will hold the scent, uh, this is just another area that I like to train in. Being in the south, we have a lot of burnt forest where prescribed fires have occurred, and I want the dog to experience that, and so I introduce this into our training. Same thing with maybe plowed fields or shortcut grass. Anything that I think that the dog may be tracking in, I want to introduce that in a training setting versus the real thing. That way, when we actually go to track, they've experienced that and they understand that I may have to work a little bit harder to get that scent in this type of area.
Leave it. Oh, there you go. Good boy.
There's nothing wrong with giving some encouragement to the dog when they've been off and they reacquire the line. Just to tell them, good boy, good girl, that they're back online. You just don't want to constantly, hey, search, find it in here, search, 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 find it, yeah, yeah. You don't want to do that because you're distracting to the dog, but an occasional encouraging word is very good.
is that? What is that? Yes, oh, it's a good boy. Oh, it's a good boy. Oh, let's get you out of this. Let's get you out of this. Ah, yes.
This is the one point of the track you do want to get all excited. You want to amp the pup up that they've done really well. Just heap the praise on them, have fun with it, make it exciting so that they expect that at the end of the track because they're wanting to have fun and they're wanting to please you. So get excited at the end of the track.